All right, so Daryll, thinking about your training week then, so are you able to break down like typically like what you do on a Monday, what you do on a Tuesday and so forth, and kind of how that might look?
Uh,
I
kind
love
of.
detail on this. I don't know if you can give me
Just
it.
see, that's what I'm not gonna do. I'm not gonna give my coaches plan. He'd kill me. But I can give you a rough outline.
Yeah, all
So
right, all right.
you kill me. But like, yeah. So Marco, you kill me. Um, Mondays
I've
is
only got
acceleration.
300 listeners. If that helps, I've only got 300 listeners so far.
Are there people in this call?
No, 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 no. It's not live. I mean, just like
Oh,
300 people that downloaded the podcast.
okay. But
Spring that on you now.
you'll have more after this episode. Trust
There
me.
we go. There we go.
But yeah, so Mondays is like acceleration. Tuesdays we'll do endurance type stuff. Wednesday we'll do speed. Thursday will be like a recovery day. Friday we'll do acceleration type stuff, and then Saturday we'll do more endurance type stuff.
All right. So Monday and Friday like typically sort of like mirror each other, and
Yeah,
then
they're very different, but that's kind of like the rough outline. But I'd say it changes. It changes depending on how my coach is feeling.
yeah.
And then Mondays, Fridays we'll do gym.
Okay. So you're lifting twice per week, and then
Sometimes
doing.
on a Wednesday as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so recovery day was the Thursday. Is that literally? Are you doing? Is that active recovery or is that like
It's
day off?
normally a running session type recovery.
Oh
It
right. Okay.
depends on how my coach is feeling. Sunday is the complete day off,
Yeah.
which is nice, but it's not really a day off because you're just thinking about Monday and then you're thinking about dying on Tuesday. So Sunday is like get your washing done,
Yeah.
you know,
Life.
do everything you couldn't do because you were too busy being laid out the whole week. But yeah, so that's kind of a rough out. I don't feel like I can say everything because that's insane.
Yeah. 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 I'm not. I'm not here
I
to
should have
try and
asked them
put.
before.
I'm not here to
I,
try and
I
sort of
doubt
put
it's a
pressure on you.
secret, but I don't want to be the one to, you know,
Yeah. No. 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 You're fine. You're fine. I guess like if I can ask a few questions that are still relatively vague. So like with your acceleration day, are you doing things like resisted accelerations? Like are you doing like work like pulling a sled or the 1080 or
yeah,
stuff like
we
that?
use the 1080 a lot. And
Okay.
then, yeah, we'll use the 1080 for a lot of acceleration stuff. And then we'll do blocks, resisted runs, stuff like that. Maybe using the sled. It depends on how he's feeling.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
And
And then
then on the speed day again, might you be using the 1080, but this time as an assisted sprint tool?
probably later on in down the year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, Wednesdays. And Wednesday will be like a technical speed day. So more upright running, working on your technique.
And is that something that you feel like? I mean, I guess like in my perspective, like I
Yeah.
would have considered Jonas like a technical coach as well. And is that something that you feel like you've put? And I think I've written this down as the next question. So maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit early. And in fact, it is the next question. But like, so I've posted a few videos of you running because I'm just a fan of the way you move. I like your mechanics. I think it's just I don't know. There's something about the way you contact the ground and set yourself up for that ground contact that I like the look of.
Thank
So
you.
is this something that you focus a lot on, like your mechanics, and is it something that you focused a lot on kind of right throughout your kind of professional career?
I would say, well, I could ask you, do you see much difference between when I was training with Jonas, Reina, or Marco?
I think so. What I would say is that I think your arms look tidier now, if that makes sense. And I think obviously like the movement of the arms is going to have some impact in terms of what's going to happen with the legs. There's obviously going to be
Yeah.
some kind of correlation between the two. I think that you potentially look like these are just my opinions. You potentially look like you've got a little bit more of range in your stride at the moment. So I don't know whether that's because I'm sure there is some sort of degree of focus on this, but as well, maybe you're stronger now, and that kind of gives you the strength to find that range a little bit more as well.
I would say for me personally, like one of my biggest improvements, I would say, is my stride length.
Mm-hmm.
Really opening that out because I feel like my previous coach Jonas my stride length was probably quite short, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that was the first thing that needed to be kind of stretched out, ironed out.
Okay.
Because I've got long legs and I need to use them.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, like play to your strengths. Like I'm a big believer in an, like I'm talking here like I'm some master coach and I'm not. But when I think about coaching and the athletes that I work with, like I try and play to their strengths. So I see what they've got that I think are going to be effective tools to help them run faster. And if I were to look at you, like as soon as you said you felt like your stride length was short, I think, well, you've got long legs. Let's see if we can capitalize on that.
I think that was the first thing that I was excited about when I could see the change. Like the first change I could see was that, okay, my stride length is opening up. Because when you watch me from when I was younger, like English schools days, probably 2011, 2010, races from when I was a lot younger, my stride was huge. So I'd say that I've gone back to my more natural running pattern.
Okay, and that's interesting.
That's been a lot of like technical, not gone back to, but I'm more similar to how I used to run when I was super young, to kind of like that junior stage of my career.
So would you say it feels like it's more instinctive now? You're just kind of running in a sort of like more, I don't know if I've asked that question correctly. Does that sort of make sense? So like when you were running so what it sounds like is when you were running as a junior, you had like this long stride, probably when you weren't thinking too much about technique because you're, however old you are, just sort of like, right, gun goes, I'm going to run as fast as I can to get to the line. And so you kind of got that instinctive sort of way of running. And then for whatever reason, you've gone through some coaching and your stride length has shortened. And then now it's kind of almost like back to your roots, I guess, like a little bit.
Yeah. And that's, I think even for my family, that was their number one thing. When I had originally moved to America, kind of completed my first-ish season there, and then going into 2021, they were like, yes, you're looking back to like how we remember you to be, kind of bigger stride length, just much more flowy downward type technique. I feel like when I was in Speedworks, everyone kind of mirrored a certain technique. And I feel like I've kind of been able to retrain myself. Well, the coaches that I've worked with have retrained me back to my what works best for me, I would say. Just more efficient for me. So yeah, so stride length is, I would say, one thing I'm really happy about, to have that back and just look like myself. And also I'd say I'm just so much stronger for what I do in the gym now. The weights I was lifting, I wasn't even cleaning before. When I had moved to Florida, I'd never cleaned before in the gym.
Oh, really?
So,
okay.
Yeah, so I remember actually one session, Airale, the hurdler.
Yep.
She was like, I had probably just got there and she was like, we were doing cleans, because there it's just like, okay, clean today. I'm like, clean? I don't know how. So I'm learning how to clean, probably doing like 40 kilos. And she's like, D, you've never cleaned before? I'm like, no. She's like, you're going to run fast. And I'm like,
right, okay, yeah, low hanging fruit, right?
Yeah, that's just like, I've just joined there and I'm just learning how to lift properly. And she's like, yeah, you're gonna run fast, and that's the world champion telling me that. And I'm like, okay. So it's just understanding that there was so much more for me to unlock.
Yeah,
training like a professional athlete.
Yeah, for sure.
Elite athlete, yeah.
And like going back to, I mean, so two words that you said that I would absolutely use to describe you when I see your technique, you said stride length and flow. And I think both of those words. And I think the race that probably sticks in my mind was the kind of demonstrates that the best was the semi-final from the Commonwealth Games this year. Just in terms of, it looks like there you go. Like you're pulling away, but it looks effortless. It looks effortless, but powerful at the same time. And you kind of got that range, you got that stride length. And I guess with this, maybe you've sort of already answered this question. I don't really know, but like, are there any sort of technical cues? Are there things that you focus on that you think work for you? So like if you're in a race, are there a couple of things that you feel like you need to think of that kind of
my coach cues my arms a lot.
Okay.
My coach cues my arms, like that's something that he cues a lot, making sure that they're pumping in the right way, coming back past my shoulder, right? Because this arm tends to sometimes not want to move. So he's quite strict with that. But in terms of once I reach 60 meters, 80 meters, he'll tell me, just do your thing. Like he believes that I just know what to do. And I believe I do as well. I'd say that we do so much technical upright running and just making sure knees are coming up. And Marco, he's smooth, to be fair. I'm thinking about it. And he just does, it's like it's hard to explain because it's not, we don't over cue things and we don't overdo it. It's like I'll just be doing my build up, so I'll be striding, or we're doing a session of doing back-to-back 70s, or even in doing repeat 250s or whatever. It's just little tiny cues. I really feel like I'm at the point now with so much repetition that I'm so in my flow that I can now start to feel what I need to be doing, and all that feels a bit off. So I'm kind of in that stage. But I would say that when I get up to top speed, when I'm at 80 meters or so in the 100, that is just instincts now.
Right.
So we really work on my acceleration and that building up to 60. I'd say that's what we really, really work on.
So I would have said like that again kind of comes back to playing to your strengths, which from what I see, your strength appears to be like the last part of your 100-meter race. So kind of, if you've set everything up like that, if you set everything up until that point effectively as you're meant to do it, then you probably you can just let autopilot take over, and then you're just putting yourself into a place where you just let that strength do its thing.
Yeah, and I think even going back to that semi-final in the Commonwealths, by that point of the season, I was just focused on driving to 30, getting up and going. That's it. It's just, once I'm up, get to that finish. And I think it's funny because when I watch videos back, which is, I asked you for a video that you posted to me once. It was a lovely video. But honestly, like, in my head, it doesn't feel how it looks. So when I watch myself on television, I'm like, oh wow, that was smooth. Like, it's still I look at myself, this is gonna sound crazy, but I do look and go, okay, that was nice.
You look at yourself and think, I want to run like that.
Literally, I'm like, how's she done that? But in my head, I'm like, but then when I watch it back, I'm just like this, which is, it's quite cool. That feels like a bit of a gift, because I feel like the upright phase is something that, yes, you can be taught, and yes, we do clean it up and make sure I'm recovering in the right place, heels recovering, knees are coming up, thighs are coming up. But it's nice when it's a gift. And I like having to work on my acceleration, getting to 30, going harder to 60. Like, I love that because it's just so you really have to focus in that bit. Once you're upright, that's it. But you really need, I personally really need to execute that first 60, which is why I like doing the indoors.
That's exactly what I was just going to ask then. So almost like the indoor season, I mean, I'm not saying it's just a training tool, but that's a big part of it as well, to be able to kind of just, I guess, like test out your training, sort of like pressure test it, basically. Put yourself in a pressurized environment and see how it's shaping up for outdoors.
100%. I mean, for me personally, I would say, the last part of my 100 meters is very strong. My 60 is what can let me down, whether it's my reaction time, standing up too quickly, just not being in the race, letting these girls have a meter ahead of me on the first step. I can't afford to do that in a 60. So I like to do the indoors for me personally, because outdoors, I believe, is a completely different situation. It's a different race. You can see certain people on the circuit indoors, and outdoors is another story. So as long as you don't get lost in that and you're just focused on yourself. For me, last year was really good because I ran 7:11, which was a 10th of my PB of 7:21.
That's a big chunk.
It's a bit of a chunk, and I had just moved to Marco in the December, so it was fantastic to kind of go out there, kind of practice what we've been working on, get that confidence, and be lining up against the best in the world at 60. That was fantastic, because I knew if I had taken off a 10th indoors, outdoors, I'm going to have improved, because my race, I mean, after 60, I'm fine. So if my 60 is better, I'm going to be better outdoors. So it's like I didn't put pressure on myself to be the best at 60 and but I wanted to be my best at 60 and go as hard as I could. Running 7:11 for me was I was super happy with that. This year I want to go faster, just to know that I'm in good tracks going to outdoors. But for me, lining up with the best girls indoors is awesome. Really, training doesn't get better than that.
For sure, absolutely. It's like, I feel like racing is the most specific kind of training, and it was interesting that I had a conversation with an a sprint Olympic gold medalist not that long ago. And he was talking about sort of 60s and 30s and stuff. And he was saying that he felt like it kind of towards the point about you saying the 60 being a different race to 100 meters. He was saying that if he was racing somebody that was a good starter and they were ahead of him at 30 meters, the way he viewed it was like, physically you might be ahead of me at 30 meters, but he said strategically I can still be ahead of you at 30 meters. And I thought that was a really good way of looking at it. So not getting too caught up with what's going on in the 60 or what's going on in the first 30 meters of a race, and just making sure that you're setting yourself up for later on in the race. And
because even last year on the circuit indoors, I remember being in Torrent and I didn't race well. And I think it was me, Swoboda, Elaine at that race.
Mm-hmm.
And after I was just a bit like, just not happy. And Elaine came, I spoke to her in the cool down and she was like, D, like, don't worry. This is Elaine. And she's like, just make sure you're focused on your thing in the 60 because outdoors is another story. So she was like, just make sure you're working on what you need to work on. Outside, you'll be fine. And that's what it's like out there on the circuit. Like you have the Olympic champion and these other ladies giving you inspiration and point and help. And that really stuck in my head for the indoor season. Like, let me just focus on my lane better and make sure I translate this to outdoors. And that's what I did. But it's nice to have those little reminders to just focus on yourself because I always say, like, especially racing, yes, the outsiders are looking at a race, 8 lanes full, but really the people racing are just focused on themselves because you really can't control what someone's going to do around you. And you know that if you execute what you've been practicing, you will run well. But I can't control what another lane does. So there's like 8 races going on in one race, if that makes sense. That's how I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And worrying about something you can't control, it's just like you say, there's no positive. You can't do anything about it. All you can do is stress yourself out. And
because if you execute, you should do what you need to do. That's it. So you got to focus on that.
Yeah, for sure. And something that you mentioned earlier, just so kind of that you spoke about, basically, it seemed like quite simple that the cues that you think about when you're running, which I quite like. I think it's very easy to overcomplicate running in a straight line. But like, I know it's not just as simple as running in a straight line, but it's very easy to make it into like quantum physics, rocket science, when perhaps it doesn't necessarily need to be.
You can definitely overdo it if you're not careful.
Yeah. And so I guess like, and a combination of that, and you spoke about repetition and maybe having Marco kind of like just give you technical nudges every now and then during training if he sees something. So it sounds like almost like you got your flow largely through repetition rather than having to like overthink it. It was just like, okay, I'm going to do this and
yeah, no,
is
definitely.
That fair?
I think, even the way Marco coaches us, his program, I'd say there's a lot of not repetition, but we do a lot of build-ups. We have a lot of opportunity to get into our stride and into like you get a lot of chance to kind of practice your rhythm, and I love that about the program. There's a lot of like you're just in your zone kind of thing, and he will. How do I explain it? I think he's got a really good way of not saying too much, but saying one thing that can change a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I work really well with him, because it's not like he does a lot of positive reinforcement and tells you this is good, now we need to do this. Now you've done that, let's now do that. It's kind of like that. Instead of like
Sometimes it's what you don't say that makes the difference as the coach.
Yeah, and sometimes he'll be like, I haven't said anything because it's good. Just keep doing it. Just be like, that D, just consistent, just focus, relax. Like he's so confident that, and the way he cues you and enforces that is positive, and it works for me. So I think sometimes a lot of it can be coaching style. I'll say that Marco's he's great. He's great. He's just got a great way of, number one, his workouts are crazy. So you already believe you're going to do something crazy because the work you've been doing is mad.
Right.
But then when it comes to the technical stuff, he's just so gradual with it, and it's like the perfect amount of letting you kind of feel it, figure it out, but then just having a new cue for you that you didn't even think of, and it's like, okay, so he's always 10 million steps ahead of where you are.
Yeah. Even a conversation I had with him for some articles, right? He said a cue that it really kind of was meaningful for me, and he talked about like floating the knee forward, and I never thought of it like that. It just made it seem like so patient without having to try and rush it too much. He's like, language is powerful, and so I think he's sort of like
considering that. When I met Marco, he didn't speak English.
This was crazy. Yeah. I mean, it's yeah.
He's done amazing to now be fluent in English and coaching so many British people, and just like he's just sick.
yeah. That's it's very impressive when people speak many languages. And I said this on another episode. Like, I'm just impressed when I see people that can speak multiple languages. It makes me feel so ignorant as like an English speaker that it's like I can't really speak your language, but you can probably speak a bit of mine. So I'll just wait. It's a bad habit.
We always talk about that because the amount I've tried to learn Italian, but it's just it's hard. It's a hard language. It's not like it's not simple. But he's like, but you don't really have to, because you just get away with speaking English, don't you? He's like, I am Italian. I had to learn English to survive. You don't have to. And I'm like, I want to. I want to be fluent. I want to do my interviews in Italian as well.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm trying.
Yeah. Good for you. And this is going to sound like I'm probing for a secret, and I'm not. But it sounds like you do like a fair amount of like what I would call like sub-max sprinting with him. So sort of like you say, like build-ups where you're doing a run at max velocity mechanics, but you're holding back on the effort a little bit to make it.
I would say it's in our warm-up. It's in our warm-ups a lot. We have a lot of back-to-backs, and we'll run to 60 a lot, and just like stride. We do a lot of our warm-ups are very intense. They can go on forever.
Yeah.
But in that time, we'll do so much like exercises, build-ups, runs. So there's a lot of opportunity for you to kind of lock into your stride pattern, your race pattern in the session. I like that because in those moments, I'm like, okay, what was I queuing yesterday? What can I bring in today? Even if I'm just doing a build up of like 60%, I can still make sure my arm's going back, and I can still make sure I'm on all of my foot and just stuff like this. So yeah, I like that. It works for me.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of there's always some kind of like technical stuff going on in the background it's always in the back of your mind when you're trying to run. Yeah, cool.
Definitely.